Hello, welcome to episode 2 of Betfred's Road to the Derby. Just over 2 weeks away now till those fantastic Epsom Classics. And I'm joined by a man who won the Derby last year, of course, and hopefully may have a chance this year as well. It is Richard Kingscote. Richard, the picture becoming a lot clearer. We've had Chesire and Lingfield. We've still got York to come, but the market just starting to settle down and some big favourites coming to the fore.
Yeah, it's, like you say, we've had some helpful punters the last week, particularly in the fillies race. The Derby still looks incredibly open, and we've got the most interesting yet to come.
We have in the Dante. We'll talk about that shortly. Let's just look back at Chester first of all. Both you, me, and Frankie. We'll hear from Frankie shortly as well, by the way. But we were there on the Wednesday where we saw a rest to win very easily. Now, it's not just about rest credentials. There's a big story with Frankie Dettori riding his last Derby. Do you think he could be the horse that Frankie rides? And if so, obviously did his chances no harm with his impressive win in the Vars?
Yeah, I imagine he will be Frankie's ride in it. He was impressive. I'm not convinced he's a Derby winner. Just for he looked a little uncomfortable around Chester. I know, obviously, Frankie was probably pretty happy to let him drift out onto some nicer ground, but he was definitely favouring going that way. Just puts a question mark there for me.
Okay, question mark over the track, and maybe the ground as well. Obviously, he was second in Group 1 Company in France on soft ground, and you know what it rode like at Chester. It was obviously very soft on the Wednesday. We had some downpours. Would quicker ground at Epsom also raise a big question mark?
Well, I mean, it might even help him. Obviously he's not going to want it lightning fast, but it might just help to have a sounder surface. Chester was very difficult conditions for everyone. I think I've heard Mr. Gosden saying he wouldn't want quick ground, but if it's a sounder surface, as long as it's not jarring, it might just help a little bit.
We also had the D Stakes as a trial. San Antonio came out on top in that one, Aidan beating Donica. Would you say that it has not as maybe a stronger form as we saw from Arrest? I mean, what was the ground like on Thursday as well by the time we got to the D Stakes?
Yeah, Thursday was, it started to dry, it got very tacky. It was very difficult conditions, very poached ground. It was a very rough race, these stakes. There was very little flow. I think the winner ended up having a bit of a nicer time than the favourite did. The favourite looked a little awkward up the straight, hanging in behind. So on another day, in another race, the placings could quite easily be reversed. It was a very, as I say, rough race and not an easy race for them.
Yeah, I think Frankie, we'll hear from shortly. So I think Frankie Foster's on about maybe the places could be altered. He quite likes old. We'll talk about passengers shortly with an eye on York, but are you quite glad, bearing in mind the ground and how rough the race was, that he missed the D Stakes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was the right call. Going to York, it looks on form the tougher race, but York is one of the nicest tracks in the world, and we've got a better surface to run on. So I'm quite pleased, particularly watching the race, that we've another opportunity.
Yeah, we'll talk about him in a short while. Just touch on the Lingfield race. Obviously, this year a little bit different, being run on the all-weather. You rode in the race. Military Order was impressive. He's a brother to Wadeyar, so he's got all the credentials. He's into 5-1 now for the Betfred Derby. How did that race ride? Did it ride like a good trial?
Yeah, it did. We went a nice gallop. I liked the winner. He was a good-looking horse, done a lot really well. Obviously, I think the form will always get crabbed a little bit being on the all-weather. And yes, it does make it difficult to point towards the Derby. But he done a lot well. I don't think he was suited by the track, but he showed some really good attributes, as did the second. And they pulled a long way clear off of what was already quite a nice gallop.
And you mentioned, obviously, I know it's on the all-weather, but he still have that downhill run and that sharp sweeping bend into the straight. Not too dissimilar, not like the turf course, but not too dissimilar to Epsom.
Yeah, it's a tough bend, that last Lingfield bend, and he quickened up round it really well when William went inside. And as I say, he looked well balanced. He done a lot really well.
And the King's Horse Circle of Fire for Sir Michael Stoute. We believe he may be Royal Ascot bound on the back of
that. So he was just not the quickest into stride from a bad draw. So Ryan settled him at the back, and things were just happening a little bit too late there up the straight for him. But he ran a nice race, and he's a likeable horse.
Okay, sticking with the Freemason Lodge angle, let's talk about Passage. We just mentioned him a little earlier. Obviously, looking ahead to the Dante this week, it's a race that Sir Michael Stoute loves to win, of course. I think he's been supplemented for this as well. I believe Crystal Ocean was the last one, also for Sir Michael Stoute. Obviously, this is an opportunity to see what's under the bonnet. He's an impressive winner of the Wood Din, and this is probably the biggest trial for the Derby as well.
Yeah, I think it is. There's a lot of form going into the Dante. Obviously, we haven't got declarations yet, but it does look the strongest of the trials. He is a very nice horse, as we saw in Newmarket, but it was a race where they were all on race. So we don't really know where we're at, and we'll find out more Thursday.
Obviously, it does look a hot race. I think Flying Honours looks set to go there. He's quite prominent in the market for Godolphin. Canberra Legend was a good winner at Newmarket as well. So it will be a true test. But you sat on him late. He's in good form. He's come out of the Wood Din well. Yeah,
he's fine. I breezed him before Chester in case he was going to run. He felt good.
Yeah, obviously missing Chester then, and off to the Dante. So best of luck with Passage. Hopefully he could be a live Betfred Derby candidate. So that's Richard's take on what we've seen last week. Let's hear from Frankie Foster then, because he was at Chester with us all as well. And what did he make of the trials on the Rudy?
Well, yes, I was at Chester for all 3 days, and there's 3 races from Chester which I think are worth paying attention to as we look towards the Betfred Oaks and the Betfred Derby. The first being the Chesire Oaks. We said if you fancied Save the Last Dance for the Chesire Oaks, you might as well have a few quid on for the Betfred Oaks, and I hope a few people did because she was so impressive and she shortened up rightly so. She also got another little form boost over the weekend. The horse that finished second to her at Leopardstown was tried in a Group 1 over the weekend and was only 3 lengths off the winner. So mightily impressive at Chester. Another little form boost over in France at the weekend, and I think at this stage a most likely winner of the Betfred Oaks. Another race which was worth paying attention to, the Chester Vase, a rest one for Frankie Dettori and John Gosden. Slight concerns about quicker ground come the Derby, that it was really testing conditions that day at Chester, which suited him. No other horse in the race really ran their race and maybe looked flattered as a result of it. John Gosden and Frankie Dettori also flagged that up. Probably a horse I'm not getting carried away with, but no better man than Frankie to prove me wrong if he was to go and win another Betfred Derby on his farewell tour. And then the final race from Chester, which is worth a look, is the D Stakes. I'm quite interested in this race. San Antonio won it for Aidan O'Brien, but I think Ryan Moore nicked the race really. It turned into a bit of a sprint, and Ryan had a much better position turning for home than Older, who had to pretty much come from last to first. And I don't think he hit top gear. I think he's a horse that takes a bit of time to get going. And the way the race panned out, I don't think he was in top gear. And if that race was ran again, or it was ran around Epsom, I might reverse the form. So Older, who's now about 25 to 1 for the Betfred Derby, is quite interesting for me. That's Chester. If there was another race that we have to talk about, your Betfred Derby favourite, Military Order, won at Lingfield on the all-weather surface. Not quite sure how we'll weigh that one up, but there are definitely some positive. They pulled clear of third. When the second horse came up sides him, he battled back and showed his stamina. He does look a very good horse. I'm just not carried away. Bit too short. Dante's round the corner. There's a few each way plays, so not getting carried away just yet. For me, the 2 horses from the weekend, or from last week, Save the Last Dance for your Betfred Oaks, and Older, maybe a nice little each way play for the Betfred Derby.
One of the biggest trials for the Betfred Oaks is the Cheshire Oaks run at Chester on the Rudy. And, Richard, we were there. Wow factor with Save the Last Dance. It was a bizarre performance because you didn't travel that well early. but boy, 22 lengths, and I believe the last 3 furlongs was quicker than the 5 furlong sprint in the card. So you can't argue with the clock.
No, I think, like you say, wow factor was there. Obviously, it's very difficult to gauge on that ground. Often horses, if they don't like it, they really down tools, and she obviously did like it. So he ended up with a massive margin. But visually, what she done, particularly around the turn when she found that gear, she was great to watch.
I mean, she was a big prize for a maiden. It feels like they may have taken Kilmore by storm, the way she both won a maiden, and then she did that last Wednesday. And there wasn't a lot of her in the paddock either. I mean, it was only a 3rd start. It could be a bit of improvement to come.
Yeah, I think she's surprising people, but she's definitely very interesting.
And the ground-wise, I mean, obviously she's Galileo, so you suggest that even better ground may even help her somewhat.
Yeah, exactly. She obviously was quite happy at Chester on that ground, but that's not to say she's not going to be happy on better ground as well.
And on the Lingfield trial again, another one that you rode in, Eternal Hope, not entered in the Betfred Oaks. But Charlie Appleby said she needs decent ground. She will not run on soft ground. They're going to keep an eye on the weather to maybe supplement her. They may be keeping an eye on the Musadora as well to see what comes out of that. But again, how did that race ride in terms of a trial for the Betfred Oaks?
Yeah, so we went quite slow in that race. We all finished in a bit of a heap. Very difficult to gauge whether there's an Oaks horse in there. My initial reaction would be there's not. There's some nice horses in it, but we didn't really get a proper feel.
Maybe an eye towards a Ribblesdale for these fillies then?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay, so that's what we've seen in terms of the fillies, but we saw Save the Last Dance put her hat in the ring for the Betfred Oaks. She's now your 6-4 favourite. Infinite Cosmos, you're going to ride on a Wednesday in the Musadora, 2nd favourite. We spoke to you obviously last week about how she came out of the maiden and how excited you are about riding her. This is the acid test now. She's won a novice contest, and she's in at the deep end, looking towards the Oaks. How are you looking about? She's looking forward to riding her.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we've got decks now. Be interesting to see where we're at. She's a likeable filly. What she done in Newmarket was great. She's going to have to run to a very good level at York. With obviously there's an unexposed horse that won at Newbury, won very well in bad ground. But even the likes of Carl Burke's horses, rated 113. So we're going to have to run to a very good level, and we'll see what we've got.
And obviously, Aidan O'Brien's put Lambada into the mix. Ryan's going to ride it. Do you think he's maybe testing the waters to see what he's got regards Save the Last Dance?
Yeah, possibly. He likes to have one in most of the trials. I'm sure it's just to get a gauge on everything and see where they're all at.
Well, now it's the all's well with Infinite Cosmos. I mean, you just sat her at home and you're looking forward to ride. Obviously, Ryan rode at Newmarket. You get to leg up on her in the big one in the Musadora.
Yeah, exactly. That's I've been very lucky. That's how it works out at the moment. I'd say Aidan has rate runners in most of these races. So fortunately for me, I get the leg up when he's unavailable.
Well, best of luck this week. Obviously, Infinite Cosmos in the Musadora and Passenger in the Dante as well. So looking forward to that. After obviously we've had York, there'll be more clues towards the Betfred Oaks and the Betfred Derby. The markets will be getting a massive shake-up on the Knavesmire this week. So thanks to Richard for joining us. Thanks to Frankie Foster as well. Next week, we'll be at Epsom next Monday for some of the horses working on the gallops. The gallops morning ahead of the Oaks and the Derby. So that's next Monday's show. Will be from Epsom. Well, thanks, Richard and Frankie, for joining us as we look and count down towards the Epsom Festival.